we are a police state and we are a prison nation because all of those people who were now able to be free and self-determine needed to be put back under the boot.
What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for being with us today. This is the Deviance Welcome podcast, brought to you by Follow Little Patience. I am John, and with me, as always, my co-host, Sel. Say hi to the people, Sel.
Hi, the people.
Fantastic. At great personal risk. How are you today, Sel? I didn't tell him I was going to do this.
The only thing that makes me more depressed than life itself is the idea of my dogs missing me.
Wow.
I had that one thought up ahead of time.
I didn't tell him I was going to do this, and he was ready for it anyway. This is the shit he does in his off time, y'all. So Sel's depressed. Shocker. That's cool. If you were looking for optimism, go somewhere else. So the U.S. is boycotting the diplomatic boycotting the Olympics in China this winter. The athletes are still allowed to go, but Joe Biden and the rest of the U.S. The U.S. dignitaries won't be attending. Thoughts?
I actually liked. You're making me skip ahead on this one. I don't want to skip ahead because my thoughts were like, I really liked one of the Chinese spokespeople's thing of, well, you weren't invited anyway.
That is what I heard. Yeah. That's one thing I had heard.
I really liked that response. Like, fuck you.
That is, yeah, it is. Yeah, but I found an interesting twist on that I'll bring up
later.
There's a twist on that point that I discovered in my research that we'll bring up a little later. But let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Why we're boycotting anyway?
Evergrande?
The U.S., not like it matters, but it actually has bipartisan support in something for once. But optics. So whatever.
Yeah. The right wing and the right wing party.
Right. We are deciding to boycott because of alleged Chinese actions within Xinjiang and the atrocities and the human rights violations and things like that have been going on there. Allegedly, of course.
Allegedly.
For those who haven't heard all of that, we've got a list that includes we're committing atrocities. They're committing atrocities. It's not us for a change, or is
allegedly.
It? Allegedly, right? In this one case, they are committing atrocities against Turkic Muslims and Uyghurs, including mass detention, torture, cultural persecution, among other offenses like enforced disappearances. We're going to touch on that. Mass surveillance, religious and cultural erasure, separations of family, forced return to China, forced labor, sexual violence, and violations of reproductive rights. A lot of that sounds awfully familiar.
like all of the shit the U.S. does in our own concentration camps here on our own soil. Right. Guantanamo Bay.
Right.
And probably...
That wasn't on our own soil. Oh, wait. Yeah, it was. It was just our soil in a different country.
In a different country. Right. It's leased property.
Right.
Essentially.
Right.
We talk
bought
about
offshore property so we could commit atrocities.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And then what we've already been doing for the past 20 years throughout the Middle East.
Right. And China has come out and said, that a lot of this stuff is bloated and exaggerated, and they're saying that, things like re-education camps is what they're calling them, are necessary to fight terrorism.
Well,
they're trying to stop terrorism.
Yes, because the Uyghurs, or the Uyghur region, Xinjiang, did have a radicalization problem among their Muslim population.
Right.
They were becoming, they did have people becoming Muslim extremists.
Right.
You know, the ones that we go into other countries and bomb them to hell for.
Yeah.
China was like, okay, let's kind of maybe like keep you contained.
The ones who took their country back like a day or a week after we left, right?
Yeah, right. China was like, okay, let's kind of keep you guys contained and also give you like some jobs programs. And then I don't know if we're jumping ahead on this one, but the whole genocide thing, do you know where that actually came from?
I
Like
do
where
not.
the underlying rumors about that came from or whatever? This guy, Adrian Zenz, who is a like Christian fundamentalist and like rabid anti-communist.
Already hate the guy.
Was
Strike one. I'm not hardcore commie like you, but strike one with
was
with religion and politics.
was looking at birth rates in this territory after they started doing the whole re-education camps thing and the flow of birth control products to this territory, and basically made the claim that China was forcing Uyghur women to have birth control so that they couldn't pop out more babies.
Mm-hmm.
That was the entirety of it. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with how fundamentalist religions treat women.
Not great.
So I don't know if like it's forced or optional, but saying it's forced for the purposes of protecting these women from their fundamentalist husbands,
right,
or whatever. Because like if you're a woman in this fundamentalist region, right, and you say I want birth control, then you go home and your husband beats the shit out of you.
Right.
But if the state is forcing you to get it, you're safe,
mm-hmm,
at least at home. Right, on that front.
Right.
I don't know if that's actually the case or not. Speculation on my part, 100%. But like, it's definitely not grounds for claiming that a genocide is occurring.
Right.
And that's where I'm really at on it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're doing a lot of stuff that, and you and I had talked post show last week when we were talking about this particular instance, and maybe it is my American upbringing that has me immediately thinking that China
bad?
is absolutely bad
Sure,
here.
sure.
I mean, and one of the things I can go for is, or one of the cases I could make there is that we are at least not like outwardly disappearing people from the public eye. Like we're talking about the Peng Shuai
Sure. Well, okay.
situation.
So here's the thing on this, like, right? Like, I know I told you this when we were post show last week, but let me go over it for the audience. Okay, like where we're at now in the United States is we are at like one of the highest levels of government distrust, and rightly so, right?
Rightly so.
From any point in our history. If my memory of history is correct, right? Like we are like at one of the highest points in our history.
I would think
right?
so.
Now, extrapolating from that, right? What is the point in our history when we actually should have trusted our government? John shook his head like can't really think of one.
That's a good question. I mean, I'm not a history major, and I certainly am not a poli-sci major. So like, I only started caring about politics recently when it became real to me that my son was going to have to live in the society I was leaving him.
Right.
So I can't really go back far in the history, but I definitely can't give you an example,
right,
of when I like felt like I could absolutely trust my government,
right, or not even during our lifetimes, but just throughout history. Like when you're looking at what's going on in the history of the United States, when is the point that we actually could have trusted them? And really, like I'm, as a person who is a little bit more history buffy, also very hard pressed to find that point where I could say I can trust the government. Right. So if there's
always something shady going on.
Right. If I don't trust the government, just like the vast majority of Americans at this point, and that's the situation that we're starting from, why the hell would I trust the things that they have to say about an ideological enemy?
Right. Of course. Propaganda is still propaganda.
Right. No matter which side it's coming from.
But if I'm looking at my own thing, and yes, through my bias American, my bias ignorant American lens, right? I see that situations like that happened with Peng Shuai. I think I'm saying her name properly. I hope so. The pro tennis player,
right,
that just completely disappeared from the public eye after publicly accusing a former vice premier of sexual assault. Right. And then she's just gone. Gone.
For sure.
It took notable names like Serena Williams, Novak Djokovic, and Naomi Osaka posting on their social media accounts to millions of people going, where the fuck is she?
Right.
I want to know, for her to all of a sudden show up at a dinner, right?
Sure.
And not say a word to anybody, right? But all of a sudden now she's showing up at dinner.
Sure.
So it's like, all right, well, important enough people raised enough light so that we're like, all right, take the black bag off. We're going to like hook up a taser no one can see or something like that. And we're going to put her at a dinner table. She's going to stare at her plate, not say a word. She's going to maybe smile a little bit because optics, right? But I don't see us doing that. But literally everything else on that list.
Right.
I was like,
Well, and see, the thing is that when it comes to that, like, the United States has been saying things like that about Kim Jong-un for fucking years, saying like he killed his cousin or his sister or whatever, or he's dead himself or whatever. And then like the next week he's showing up and
sounds like
the
some
person,
QAnon shit.
the person that he allegedly killed is like at a movie with him, and they're just sitting around, with the, chilling with the dogs that he allegedly fed that person to, petting the dogs while they're watching a movie in a home theater type situation or some shit like that. The amount of like demonstrably proven wrong claims about stuff that's happening about people in communist countries is like off the scale.
Well, I don't know, man. I mean, you've seen Forrest Gump, right?
Yeah.
How many situations did they just like, CGI him in to like to situations where he was talking to JFK, a president who had been dead for 20 years prior to the filming.
Right, but
Tupac is still appearing in music videos, bro.
Sure, right, but now you're talking about, now you have the technologically backwards country of North Korea because they're communist being one side of the propaganda, but then they also have the fucking AI capabilities of doing deep fakes that are so convincing that like nobody notices.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing you that he didn't exist. Right?
I mean,
no, I'm just messing with you at this point.
Sure, I got
because this is one of those things where it's like you're never going to know unless you are on the level.
Unless you are there.
Unless you are on the level,
right?
You are left to speculate,
right?
Because the people that know the answer to those questions, they're not talking about them with people that are not on the level,
right?
So you can be in the room with those people, right?
Right.
And you're still going to get the PC from the prompter answer.
Never
But you're
from both sides. From both sides. I readily acknowledge that both sides, because that's what power does. Is it tries to fucking protect itself.
I mean,
like that's what people do when they're in positions of power, is they try to protect themselves. So both sides of that particular ideological war are going to be doing the same shit.
Right.
Readily accept that.
And let's be perfectly clear. Like, I'm going to run down this list again of atrocities, quote, atrocities that we're boycotting the Olympics for.
Right.
And see which ones I can think of actual
Instances
examples for here at home.
Yeah.
Mass detention.
Our entire prison system. Just on the surface, our entire prison system.
Torture. Guantanamo Bay. Cultural persecution. Anyone who's not white.
Yeah.
Right? Anyone who's not white. Let's see. Enforced disappearances. We did have here in Michigan even. Remember we were hearing that protesters were being kidnapped?
I mean, there was definitely
by
some
unbadged officials.
There was some black bagging going on over the BLM stuff, dude. Like, it didn't make it into mainstream news for the obvious reasons.
Yep,
right?
only local.
But like those incidents were being reported happening.
And
So
then-
like
right. Mass surveillance, obviously.
Duh.
Right. They're tracking us. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
You own a cell phone, right?
Right.
Religious
And like cameras everywhere.
right.
Like, you know, Detroit has like a program with the police where like gas stations and shit like that are getting like special kickbacks or whatever for having cameras in their stores or and outside their stores
Yep.
that feed info directly to the cops.
And there's traffic cams all over the place.
Right.
You got religious and cultural erasure. Anybody who's not a Christian,
Right.
right? That's just how we do in America. Separations of family. Children still in cages. Last
Right.
I checked.
Yep.
What are we calling them now? What's the optics on that?
I
Are
forgot.
we calling them re-education camps yet?
No, we're not calling them re-education
Oh.
camps. They're what the fuck was the term? I don't
Detention resorts, I'm sure.
remember. Yeah,
Like,
basically.
This
It's some nonsense for the exact same conditions.
right. You have forced labor. I don't.
The prison system, dude.
The prison system.
The prison system
There
is
you go.
like we have to remember that the whole reason that our prison system exists as the way it does was because it was the way to maintain the labor force that the abolition of slavery left a fucking
Right.
hole for.
Yep.
Right. We are a police state and we are a prison nation because all of those people who were now able to be free and self-determine needed to be put back under the boot.
Right. Exactly. So, we're definitely on that list. And then you've got violations of reproductive rights.
Huh.
I mean, this seems to be going the opposite direction because they're trying to suppress birth over here, where we're trying to make it so that everything gets born here,
Right.
regardless of the circumstances.
Sure.
Right? We don't give a crap about it after it's born. But
Right.
it's getting born.
Well, and
because
here's the
God
thing.
says so.
And here's the thing is
You
that
hold on. You
Okay.
can say what the fuck you want to, but any argument you make pro or against abortion, pro-life, it's religious tied.
Sure.
Tell me it's fucking not. I'm gonna tell you why you're fucking wrong. So religion is getting in the way of that too.
Sure.
But-
But as I was going to say, one of the things that prior to this whole expansion of extremism in Xinjiang, their population was growing faster than any other region in China
Right.
prior to that point. So like
A lot of people in China.
and there's a lot of people in China, period. Right. So there's definitely like a population density issue, and one of the things that communists seem to recognize that nobody else fucking does is if you do have high population density and don't have some means of making sure that that population is maintained within the material fucking like food supply, job supply.
Population needs resources.
Right. Population needs resources. And if you don't have the resources, you have to control the population. And if the population doesn't have the resources, controlling that population until such a time that you can set that up that they do have the resources will work out better for everybody in the long
makes sense.
run. Right.
But this is also not the type of thing where we're killing babies, right?
Right.
We're setting regulations beforehand, like, yo, don't get pregnant more than once, okay? Like,
Right.
ahead of time,
Sure.
Like, and we'll give you the means to make sure you
Well,
have birth control and,
they don't
and
even,
things like that.
They don't even have the one-child policy anymore. They did away with that a while ago.
Did they?
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. There's still some like unintended consequences and like some extreme fallout in terms of what that has done to their population. It was not the best thought out idea, and I'm not going to claim that it was.
No way.
But within the context of what they were shooting for, it was a well-intentioned idea.
In hindsight,
In hindsight, it
someone
was a
could make the proper revisions to that idea.
Yeah.
And that system could work
Yes.
with the proper hindsight influenced revisions. Right?
I mean, what it came
So,
down
like-
to is that they were still a patriarchal society, so they still preferred boys, right? So, if they were getting their prenatal checks done and found out that it's a girl, they would terminate the pregnancy in
Right.
order to make their one child be a boy,
Right.
And that led to a like severe imbalance between males and females of that age.
Yeah.
Right. So there's definitely some consequences that like some education about, like feminizing feminist education, saying, maybe you don't have to have sons all the goddamn time.
Right.
Prior to instituting it, might have been a good thing. Would almost certainly have been a good thing.
Would almost certainly have been a good thing.
Maybe not even enough, but at least it would have been a starting point.
Right. I don't know. But it to summarize there, it seems like a lot of the atrocities that we're boycotting are, it's all stuff that I could easily make examples of, or at least ask my buddy Sel here, and he can give me examples of right off the top of his head. We're doing the same stuff too. Mm-hmm. So it's just optics.
I mean, really what it comes down to is the one human rights violation that they actually care about, the existence of private property. Mm-hmm. China does allow private property, but they also will, at the drop of a hat, go, oh, some billionaires out of line, we're going to seize all their shit and fucking hang them in the public square.
Right.
You know what I mean? Something that I wish we did.
Honestly.
We might need to beep that out. But
why?
Maybe not.
Why?
But look, all I'm saying is that's the one thing that they actually care about, and that is the one thing that is the determiner between who's violating human rights and who isn't, right? If a country has property rights where they don't do that kind of thing, like the United States, then you're a free country, and if you're not, you're an evil authoritarian. That is the line.
Right.
Period.
Well, yeah, if you do it our way,
right,
then you're a free country. If you do it any other way, you're a fucking...
Well, no. You can do it. You can do it the Saudi way. The Saudis are our good buddies, and they're a monarchy, but it's private property.
Oh. Okay, so it really just is the private property.
It really is the private property. It doesn't have to necessarily be our way. But you can have an authoritarian religious extremist of a different religion nation out there that is our very good friends and very good buddies, and then they can even turn around and kill our reporters and have and make up the majority of a terrorist cell that attacks our country, and we're still good buddies with them because of private property.
Because they're freedoms.
Yes.
How about that? And refresh my memory, what type of people usually have private property?
Rich people.
That's right. Imagine that. I wonder why we prioritize that so much.
Capitalism.
How about that? You were right on that. You want to give me your Chinese response that you enjoyed? Because I read that and I chuckled too.
Yeah, it was the dude from I think it was just one of their Twitter users, right? Like one of the people that have a Twitter account that speak on behalf of China was just like, who cares? You weren't invited anyway.
Right.
And I loved it.
Well, apparently
and also there was some threats of retaliation of some sort or another. Who knows how that's going to actually play out.
The way I understood it was that the guy did make the quote, like, we weren't inviting people anyway.
Right.
Apparently Putin has been invited.
Okay.
So there is that.
I mean,
the idea was that, or I believe the quote implied that they weren't inviting anybody because COVID. And,
okay.
Because, So
I was under the impression that it was very much a dig directly at the Biden administration and all of those delegates. But...
Well, I got a better dig for you.
Okay.
But that was what I heard, and then I also read that Putin was extended an invitation. So okay. I don't know. I feel like this is just kind of just jawing back and forth.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That's right. I did hear one of the Chinese state columnists saying he hoped Biden lives long enough to see the Chinese boycott the Olympics in LA in 2028. Like, that's rowdy. I hope he lives another 6 years. I mean, well, 6.5 years, because Summer Olympics probably. But yeah, and to your point, you had mentioned that they have vowed retaliation, whatever that means. It could just mean, oh, well, we're not going to show up to yours. And it's like, to a point, and the Chinese...
Or we're going to stop bailing out Evergrande, so now your stock market prices are fucking plummeting. Ow, my stocks.
But, and a lot of the Chinese columnists and stuff like that have come out and said, that this is kind of pointless. Like, nobody, I guarantee you, of all the athletes, because the Olympics, it's about sports.
Right.
It's about athletes.
Right.
It's about being able to, the athletes being able to come to a higher level than their professional leagues, which are largely, I mean, yeah, they can play all over the world.
Sure.
Right? But the U.S. Professional Basketball League doesn't always play the German Professional Basketball League. So you really are competing with the world's best.
Right.
All at the same time as opposed to spread out.
Right.
It's about the games.
Or
it's about
instead of having your one U.S. super team that has all of the best people from Germany and Australia and Japan and wherever, whatever, all on the same team, they're now representing their nations instead of somebody's money.
Well, there's enough of those stars that they are scattered. But yeah, you do still have super teams. So I'm going to give you at least half a point on that one. Good job. Yeah, but a lot of them are saying this was about the sports. Who the fuck cares about the politics? Nobody cares.
Right.
Of all the athletes that are showing up, nobody gives a fuck. Like, they want to see Shaun White snowboard. They don't give a fuck whether or not Joe Biden is sitting in the press box.
Right.
They don't care.
Right.
Nobody cares.
I mean, nobody. He's going to be sleeping if he shows up anyway.
Right. And when it comes down to it, I mean, it's a lot about this, and it's become political bickering.
Yeah.
And the term Cold War has been tossed. It's a Cold War mentality.
Yeah,
and we're doing this stuff, and we need to review the terms of that bet that we made, because I believe that was directly tied to COVID and not Xinjiang. So.
Okay.
So we need to make sure, because you might just owe me $20, or I might owe you $20 here real soon, because that whole tensions with China thing.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
One way or another, it's sliding.
Yep.
And tensions are. It's like we're bickering.
Yeah.
Because we're not Afghanistaning anymore. Now we're gonna start picking with China.
Well,
and
see, here's the thing: is that speaking of Afghanistan, is that China is now going to be picking up the slack in Afghanistan. That power vacuum that we left, China is the one filling it, and China is the one that's like bringing some stability to the situation, and in the process, through the Belt and Road Initiative, creating at least a situation where the Taliban is at least saying on paper, going to the prompter and saying that they're going to give, or continue some of the women's rights that have emerged since our occupation.
On the prompter.
I don't know if that's actually going to be the case.
I hope so.
Absolutely. But it's China's influence that's making that happen.
Yep.
So, and that's why, and it's China's influence like that all around the world growing that is the source of all of this tension, right? Because the U.S. is not about to be the big dog anymore.
Right. We're not about being little brother.
Right.
And, well, let's just face it. We're Americans. Our ego just can't handle that.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Are you going to watch the Olympics? I know you hate the Summer Olympics was when Sequest was usually taken over. Do you watch the Winter Olympics?
I mean, at this point, I'm going to plug an organization called No Olympics, which talks about a lot of the problems that come with the Olympics to the regions that they're being hosted, where basically it's a way for rich people to become richer. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of depth about it because I don't really know the material that well, but I get the general gist that the Olympics really aren't all that good for people, other than the people like participating in them.
And the sports fans who enjoy athletic competition.
Sure. I mean, there's a way to do that without fucking, like in Greece, they all showed up at a fucking Coliseum and fucking wrestled with some olive oil. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't like rebuild their entire infrastructure and build up a whole bunch of buildings that are going to be used for one season and then like abandon them.
Well, that's true. To that point though, they don't just get picked for this. They have to submit plans and things like that. So the country is not like being dumped on.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right. They're volunteering for it.
For instance, there are, especially in this country, when the Super Bowl comes to your town, right? When the Super Bowl came to Ford Field, they put up $100 million suspension bridge in Detroit with that money. They put it in the wrong fucking spot. But but it's there and it's beautiful. So you definitely get an economic boost from stuff like this. But it's not like the country is just being chosen and you're like, here, you must now build a stadium you're never going to use again.
It's one of those things, like, it's kind of like, remember when the whole thing about the new Amazon headquarters was going on, and like there was all of those bonuses or benefits that were going to come to whoever for the new Amazon headquarters, and then it turns out that like the tax that's basically like paying back the tax breaks.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's a bit more complicated of an issue than that, and like I said, I don't know the material well enough to really argue it. I just know that there's good reason to be opposed to the Olympics on the level of like a human being to other human beings in the region.
So what you're saying is, to summarize, you read far enough to confirm your bias, and then didn't bother going on to the details. Right? Well, hold on. And you didn't bother going into the details any further than what you needed to quickly confirm your bias, and then you moved on to something you felt was more important.
It was more like, in the sense of this particular topic, I dropped the ball on researching to that level of depth. It was something that I heard about during the last Olympics that I haven't looked at since then. I just heard about it in detail back then and was like, oh yeah, that's bad. I don't like that. And then like the Olympics were over and nobody's talked about it since then. And like,
okay.
It's just, I haven't followed up and refreshed that memory.
But intention aside, it is fair to say you read something far enough to confirm your bias, and then didn't bother looking at it forward, and then brought it to a podcast to broadcast as though it's something that validates the need to say that the Olympics are bad. I'm not arguing with you either way. I'm just picking at you now because we talk about doing the work all the time.
Sure.
And I know you hate the Olympics because Sequest, right? And your case may be valid. But I'm gonna say,
I mean, my case is petty as fuck. Let's be real. My real gripe is petty as fuck.
Well, and to be fair, especially in places like, when the Olympics were in Atlanta, right, we already have pro stadiums, all over the place, and in the summer, the football stadiums aren't being used unless they're being used for concerts,
right,
and stuff like that. So it's something that could easily be done, and they have sports complexes all over the place. So in a place like LA, where they just built a new stadium that was also kind of tied into that, like they're going to use that plenty of times. Yeah. And it's not one of those things that they're just going to be left with the bill.
Right. If I remember, it's also some like gentrification stuff. Like they end up like picking up the whole ass homeless population and drop kicking them somewhere else. Like that kind of shit happens too. Like I said, I don't remember exact details, but it is something where like it has economic impacts on the poorest people in those regions.
Well, of course it does.
And not necessarily for the better.
Of course. And I mean, I'm certainly not I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying like the stuff you've mentioned is
I
kind
should
of
have done
the
my
stuff
homework on bringing it up.
Is more well, there's that. But it's more like the stuff you've mentioned is the stuff that's happening anyway.
Yeah.
It's just the Olympics are being used as the excuse for this period of time every 4 years or something.
It's an acceleration of the thing that's happening anyway within the region. And that's basically like
something to make the optics a little better when you're pushing the homeless people off the street.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been Deviance Welcome. You can check out more episodes and get access to the latest everything on the website, volatilepatients.com. Sign up for the mailing list and tell us what kind of topics you'd like to hear. Check the sock meds if that's your thing, facebook.com/volatilepatientsmusic.
On Twitter, spelled weird because Twitter did not give us enough characters, at VOLATYLPATIENCE. And spelled normally on Instagram, volatile_patients, because Instagram did give us enough characters.
Thank you, Instagram. You can check out the YouTube channel at Volatile Patients or the Deviance Welcome specific channel at Deviance Welcome. Check out the Deviance Welcome Facebook group where you can continue the discussion with us. Remember to give us a review on Apple. And the U.S. dignitaries are boycotting the Olympics. I really don't think many people care.
Literally nobody gives a shit.
Right. This is just optics. And, well, great. Way to posture.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll see you next week. Say bye to the people, Sal.
Bye, the people.